What if the reason your life hasn't changed has nothing to do with your intelligence, your discipline, or your motivation? What if you've been trying to transform yourself using the very strategy that's been keeping you stuck? Stay with me until the end, because the final tip is the one almost nobody applies. It seems simple at first, yet it has the power to completely change the way you think about success, happiness, and personal growth. And once you understand it, you may never look at your life the same way again. 1. Stop trying to change your life. Change your environment. First, most people believe change begins with a decision. They tell themselves, starting tomorrow, I'll be more disciplined. But tomorrow arrives, and nothing changes. Not because they lack commitment, but because they wake up in the exact same environment that created yesterday's behavior. Here's something most people never realize. Your environment is making thousands of decisions for you before you even become aware of them. Look around the room you're in right now. Everything around you is sending signals. Your phone tells you to check one more notification. The television invites you to relax. The snacks on the kitchen counter whisper that one bite won't hurt. Even the people you spend time with silently influence what feels normal. We often think our habits come from our personality, but many of them are simply responses to the cues surrounding us every day. When the environment stays the same, your brain naturally follows the same patterns because it loves what is familiar. Familiar feels safe, even when it keeps you stuck. Instead of asking yourself how to become more disciplined, ask a different question. How can I make the right choice, the easiest choice? Put the book where you'll see it before your phone. Leave your workout clothes ready the night before. Remove the apps that steal your attention. Spend more time with people whose actions reflect the person you want to become. These changes seem small, but they quietly reshape your daily decisions without requiring constant self-control. The truth is that successful people don't rely on extraordinary willpower every day. They build environments that make good decisions almost automatic. They reduce temptation instead of constantly fighting it. When you stop treating discipline as a battle and start treating your surroundings as your greatest ally, change becomes far less exhausting. And once your environment begins working for you instead of against you, something even more important starts to happen. Because the next obstacle isn't a lack of motivation. It's something much more subtle, and almost everyone overlooks it. 2. Stop looking for motivation. Start reducing resistance. One of the biggest lies people believe is that action begins with motivation. They wait for the perfect morning, the right mood, or the burst of energy that will finally push them forward. Days turn into weeks, weeks become months, and nothing changes because motivation was never meant to lead the way. Your brain is constantly trying to conserve energy. Every difficult decision, every complicated task, every unnecessary step increases the chances that you'll postpone what truly matters. This is not a character flaw. It's a survival mechanism. The problem is that in today's world, this instinct often works against your biggest goals. Instead of asking, how can I become more motivated? Ask, how can I make this impossible to avoid? If reading 20 pages feels overwhelming, read one. If going to the gym feels like too much, promise yourself you'll walk through the front door and spend 5 minutes there. If starting a project feels intimidating, open the document and write a single sentence. These actions seem insignificant, yet they break the hardest barrier of all: getting started. Momentum is far more powerful than motivation. Once you're moving, your mind begins adjusting to the new behavior. The resistance that looked enormous a few minutes earlier starts to disappear. What felt impossible becomes manageable simply because you took the first step. This is why successful people don't depend on feeling inspired every day. They design routines with almost no friction. They remove unnecessary choices. They simplify the beginning. They understand that consistency is built through repetition, not emotional intensity. Think about the habits you've failed to maintain in the past. Were they truly impossible, or were they simply too difficult to begin? Sometimes the distance between the life you have and the life you want is smaller than you imagine. Often, It is hidden inside the first 2 minutes of action. But even when your environment supports you and your routines become easier, another invisible force can still pull you backward. It lives much deeper than your habits. It lives inside the story you keep telling yourself about who you are. And unless that story changes, lasting transformation will always feel out of reach. 3. Your identity is still trapped in your past. There is a silent reason why so many people keep repeating the same patterns, even after changing their routines. It has nothing to do with intelligence or opportunity. It has everything to do with identity. Most people don't live according to their potential. They live according to the story they've been repeating for years. Maybe you've caught yourself saying things like, "I've never been disciplined. I'm just an anxious person. I'm terrible with money." Or, "I always give up." Those words may seem harmless, but every time you repeat them, your brain treats them as instructions instead of observations. The mind is always trying to stay consistent with the identity it believes is true. If you believe you're the kind of person who quits, every challenge becomes proof that you were right. If you believe you're incapable of change, every mistake strengthens that belief. Without realizing it, you begin protecting a version of yourself that no longer deserves to exist. Now ask yourself one honest question. Are you making decisions based on who you are today, or based on someone you stopped being years ago? Think about how much you've already survived, how much you've learned, and how many experiences have shaped you. Yet your inner voice may still be judging you through the lens of old failures, old disappointments, or opinions that other people placed on you long ago. Your past can explain your behavior, but it does not have the authority to define your future. Every meaningful transformation begins the moment you stop introducing yourself through your limitations and start acting like the person you are becoming. Identity is not something you discover. It is something you build through repeated choices. Every promise you keep to yourself becomes evidence. Every difficult decision you honor becomes another brick in the foundation of your new identity. Eventually, you no longer need to convince yourself that you've changed. Your actions speak before your thoughts do. But changing your identity does not eliminate discomfort. In fact, it often creates even more of it. The next stage of growth asks something that many people are unwilling to do. It asks you to stay on the path even when progress feels uncomfortable, uncertain, and invisible. 4. Learn to accept discomfort without calling it failure. The moment you decide to grow, something unexpected happens. Life doesn't suddenly become easier. It becomes unfamiliar. And for many people, unfamiliar feels like a warning sign. That is why so many give up, just when they're beginning to make real progress. They mistake discomfort for evidence that something is wrong, when in reality, discomfort is often evidence that something is finally changing. Think about the first time you learned any new skill. You weren't confident. You weren't efficient. You made mistakes that felt embarrassing, yet you kept going because you expected the process to be uncomfortable. Somehow, when it comes to personal growth, we forget that same rule. We expect confidence before action. We expect certainty before commitment. We expect immediate results after a few days of effort. When those expectations collide with reality, doubt quietly takes over. Growth demands that you become comfortable looking inexperienced. It asks you to make decisions without guarantees. It requires you to face moments when nobody applauds your effort, when your progress is invisible, and when the only person who knows you're changing is you. Many people spend years avoiding temporary discomfort without realizing they are choosing permanent frustration instead. They stay in familiar routines because those routines feel safe, even when they produce the same disappointing outcomes year after year. There is a quiet truth that changes everything. Pain is not always a signal to stop. Very often, it is simply the feeling of leaving behind a version of yourself that no longer fits the life you want to build. The strongest people are not those who never feel fear or uncertainty. They are the ones who stop treating those emotions as enemies. They understand that courage is not the absence of discomfort. Courage is the decision to move forward while discomfort is still present. The day you stop asking, "Why is this so hard?" and start asking, "What is this experience trying to teach me?" your entire relationship with failure begins to change. Every obstacle becomes information instead of a verdict. Every setback becomes part of the process instead of proof that you should quit. And once you stop measuring your journey by how comfortable it feels, another transformation begins. You also stop measuring your growth by something that can be just as misleading: immediate results. 5. Stop measuring your growth by the results. One of the fastest ways to lose hope is to expect visible results before invisible progress has had time to do its work. We live in a world that celebrates outcomes. Promotions, transformations, achievements, and success stories receive all the attention. What almost nobody sees are the quiet mornings, the repeated choices, the moments of doubt, and the countless days when nothing seems to be happening. That is where most people give up. They mistake a lack of visible results for a lack of progress. But those are not the same thing. Imagine planting a tree. You water the soil every day, yet for weeks you see nothing. If you judged your effort only by what appeared above the ground, you would probably stop watering it. What you cannot see is that the roots are spreading deeper every single day, preparing the tree to grow strong enough to survive the storms ahead. Your personal growth works exactly the same way. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, patience over impulse, or learning over comfort, you're strengthening roots that no one else can see. Those choices may not change your life overnight, but they are quietly changing you. And once you change, your results eventually have no choice but to follow. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. A single extraordinary day rarely transforms a life. Hundreds of ordinary days, lived with intention, almost always do. Instead of asking, "Why haven't I reached my goal yet?" ask yourself a better question. Am I becoming the kind of person who will eventually reach it? That question shifts your attention from chasing quick rewards to building lasting character. It reminds you that success is not a destination you stumble upon. It is the natural consequence of the person you become through repeated action. There will be days when progress feels invisible. There will be moments when you question whether your effort is worth it. Those are often the moments when your future is being built most deeply. But there is one final shift that brings everything together. It has nothing to do with working harder, becoming more productive, or achieving more. It has everything to do with creating a life so meaningful that you no longer feel the need to escape from it. 6. Build a life you don't need to escape from. At some point, the real question stops being how to become more productive and starts being something much deeper. Why are you trying to escape your own life in the first place? For many people, the constant pursuit of goals is not just about growth. It is also about distraction. A way to avoid discomfort, dissatisfaction, or the quiet feeling that something is missing. But if your life only feels meaningful when you're chasing the next achievement, you may never actually feel present in the life you're building. A strong life is not only defined by success, it is defined by alignment. The feeling that your daily actions are not in conflict with your values. That what you do, how you live, and who you are becoming are not pulling you in opposite directions. This is where many people get stuck. They build routines that look productive but feel empty. They accumulate goals but lose connection. They become efficient but not fulfilled. Ask yourself honestly, if no one was watching, if there was nothing to prove, and no one to impress, would the life you're living still feel worth living? That question is uncomfortable because it removes all external justification. It forces you to confront whether your choices are truly yours, or if they are shaped by pressure, comparison, or expectation. Building a life you don't need to escape from means designing days that are not only effective but also meaningful. It means allowing space for rest without guilt, for relationships without distraction, and for moments where you are not becoming something, but simply being. It also means redefining success, not as constant acceleration, but as quiet alignment. A life where peace is not something you find after achieving everything, but something you begin to experience along the way. When your daily life stops feeling like something you need a break from, discipline no longer feels like punishment. It becomes direction. And growth stops being a chase and becomes a natural expression of who you are. And once that shift happens, everything that came before starts to make sense. Because you realize that rebuilding your life was never just about becoming more. It was about becoming more honest with yourself. And from that honesty, everything else begins to stabilize. Conclusion: the life you rebuild is built in silence. What you've seen in this journey is not a list of techniques. It is a shift in perspective. Because rebuilding your life was never about one dramatic moment where everything changes at once. It was always about something quieter, smaller, almost invisible in the beginning. It starts when you stop blaming your lack of discipline and start noticing the environment shaping your behavior. It continues when you realize motivation was never the missing piece, only friction was. It deepens when you understand that your identity has been repeating old stories that no longer belong to you. Then something subtle happens. You begin to stop reacting to discomfort as failure. You stop measuring your growth by what you can immediately see. And slowly, your attention shifts from chasing results to becoming someone different. That is the real transformation. Not intensity, but direction. Not pressure, but awareness. And if there is one thing to take from all of this, it is that your life is not waiting for a perfect moment to change. It is responding to the smallest decisions you make when no one is watching. The moments that feel insignificant are often the ones that shape everything that comes next. You don't rebuild your life by escaping it. You rebuild it by facing it with clearer eyes, one choice at a time. And once you start seeing yourself through that lens, the question is no longer whether change is possible. The question becomes how far you are willing to go with the version of yourself you are becoming. Now, look at your own life for a moment. Not as something broken, but as something still under construction. Because the next step is always available. And it is always smaller than you think.